topic is relationships, but really we're thinking of worship. Because when we put God first, and when we seek to try and honour him by living how he wants us to live, or trying to walk in the way that he would lead us on, that's worship, isn't it? That's worship. So our theme, our little topic might be relationships, but actually we're on the road to becoming worshippers and trying to worship in every step of this journey, in every moment. So hopefully you'll have that sense as we go. But it is about relationships, nevertheless. And I know there's a few kind of young marrieds. There'll be some people who are perhaps dating, maybe even engaged, and then there might be some people here who are not dating anybody at all at the moment. And that's good that we have a mixture, because all the stuff we're going to look at is for everybody, whether you're dating or not. It's good to be aware of the stuff we're looking at. A few giggles. Is somebody waiting for a proposal or something? So, Russell is, right, okay. We'll see what happens here, Russell. Relationships. It can be these parts of our lives that give us just the greatest joy. You know, just can be amazing. But at the same time, there can also be a whole lot of pain and hurt wrapped up in relationships, right? Right? Yes. Yeah. You might not admit it, but yeah, there's a lot of heartache in there as well as the joys. And the perfect example of relationship is God. God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. What we call the Trinity. The way God exists is the perfect example of relationship. And incredibly, he invites us in on that. Through Jesus, who has made a way that we will know God, he invites us in on that perfect relationship. That is mind-blowing right from the start, isn't it? That God would want us to be involved in that. So that is a perfect relationship, and we're invited to take part. Why? Because that's what we're on this earth for. If you're wondering what life is all about tonight, I don't know, maybe you have some big questions. Why am I here? What's life all about? Relationship. You and I were made by God for God, that we might know him and enjoy his awesome, awesome plan for our living, for each step along the journey. It's all about relationship. And so there's maybe some Presbyterians here. Most of you Presbyterians, if you get the old catechism going, man's chief end, right? There you go. Like, this is the Presbyterian side of the room. This is not. Okay, that's fine. That's all right. Don't worry about that. Yeah, what's man's chief end? To know God, to glorify him. To know him. It's relationship, isn't it? And right from the very start of the Bible, we see that little inkling in Genesis 2. Adam is there. And God says, you know, it's not good for man to be alone. It's not good for man to be alone, isolated. And then God creates Eve. It's about relationships. Our lives are interconnected, aren't they? There are kind of, I guess, three main big areas where we have relationships. Close relationship. I mean, there's loads on there. You could say you're linked to the fans of the football team you support, but close relationships are probably three areas, right? Your family, your friends, and then the romantic interests in life. The romantic relationship. And that is where we want to kind of focus tonight. And so some of you might feel a bit uncomfortable about that. A couple of people twitching in their seats already. It's going to be good. It's going to be great. We're going to focus on the romantic kind of side of life. And we're going to talk about dating to begin with, really, in the context of worship and trying to worship God. And so we're talking about this area of life that gets the heart beating just a little bit faster than what it normally does. The sort of part of life that gets girls, young girls in particular, giggling and blushing, and that leaves guys speechless. You know when you ever see a guy, particularly thinking of school pupils, see a guy that kind of the heart races, he has this romantic interest, and she walks by, he just loses the power of speech. Man in that moment, or boy in that moment perhaps, just goes, that's it. That's all you get from man in that moment, until the moment has passed. And if it's girls, perhaps slightly different, kind of they do this like ducks, maybe ducks getting together and they kind of in place, like a little gaggle, a little giggle goes on, and a bit of a blush, Because there's something about romantic relationships that just is kind of exciting. You know, the heart kind of races a little bit more, and you're pretending I'm wrong, but I know it's true. You can't hide it. Right? And so we're talking about a part of life where there are strong feelings. And we've got a video clip that's going to be shown up here of a guy who is in the thick of this. He has strong feelings for this woman, and he's making some kind of unusual choices in his pursuit of her. So if we watch that clip, hopefully it'll become clear to you as we go.
Oh, she's single because I don't do breakups.
Hi, thank you for seeing me. She just got out of a relationship. Is that a problem? Because if it is, it's fine. I'm a little uncomfortable with this anyway, you know. Definitely been hurt a lot, you know. I had a lot of bad experiences. Some good ones, you know, definitely a lot of bad ones. And, you know, I'm desperate. Basically, not in general, you understand, you know, not just for anybody, but, man, for her, yeah.
Why don't you tell me about her?
Oh. Well, let's see, what can I say? My company handles her finances. I'm a tax consultant, but I'm one of them. I'm the junior man on the account.
So does she know you're interested?
Oh, no.
Alive?
I lent her my pen once.
Shoot. Is that even a pen?
Albert, you're crushing my heart. Allegra, as in Allegra Cole.
Yeah, you know, I realize that I'm not her usual type.
Well, her last boyfriend, like, owned Sweden or something.
And the guy was a bum. He didn't seem like a very nice person to me.
You swing for the fence.
Hey, look, you don't think I'm trying talking myself out of this? I mean, you don't think I know how ridiculous this is? I know, okay? I just thought that maybe, with your help, You know what? I'm really sorry I wasted your time.
Hold on a second, Albert.
You know what it's like? Getting up every morning, feeling hopeless. Feeling like the love of your life is waking up with the wrong man. But at the same time, hoping that she still finds happiness. Even if it's never going to be with you.
You are flat out of your mind. You know that?
Yeah.
That's good.
It is?
Good. You ever heard of Michelangelo?
Yeah.
Heard of Sistine Chapel?
Yeah.
Michelangelo. Sistine Chapel.
Okay, so poor old Albert there, his feelings are so strong for Allegra that he goes and hires the date doctor. I don't know if that was a wise choice or not. It's kind of certainly unusual practice, right? The date doctor. I think guys like that actually exist in the States. Date doctors, yeah, probably. But it's a weird thing to do, but he does it because his feelings are so strong. And when we think about this area of kind of dating and relationships, we have to be careful, really, don't we? Because whenever strong feelings are at play, it would be very easy to just be led by those feelings and to be perhaps walking down a path that is maybe not quite the way God wants you to handle yourself. Whenever strong feelings are in play, we perhaps kind of can get towed along by those feelings. So really what we want to do tonight is just say, what does God's word say about how I handle myself, how I live in relationships, in dating? Is there anything in the Bible, any sort of command, any principle or any guidance for me when I think about dating and relationships? And the good news is yes. We can easily think that this whole area of relationships and dating was perhaps something that people in the days of the New Testament never kind of lived with. But they're so wrong. And there's a church in Corinth, modern-day Greece, and Paul wrote 2 letters to those guys, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, funny enough. And a major topic in his letters is dealing with relationships. and issues about what is appropriate in relationship, what is inappropriate. Big issues. People sleeping with people they shouldn't be sleeping with. How do you respond? What's a husband and wife meant to act like? What about if you're just dating? All of those issues are mentioned in some of those letters. 1 and 2 Corinthians is a great example. So the folks who received the teaching first time off are not all that different to you and I, really. They didn't have iPad, right? But still, same heart and soul and same sort of issues. So we're going to be exploring what God's Word says about this area tonight.
Excuse me, before we get into what the Bible actually talks about in guidance, we just want to talk about some of our motivations for dating or for getting into relationships in the first place, and good motivations and wrong motivations also. So, if you're either dating somebody or you're thinking, do you know what, I'd really love a boyfriend or I'd really love a girlfriend because I'd just love to have that acceptance of somebody. I'd love to have somebody who just, accepts me as I am. Or, somebody to make me feel better about myself. Or, I'm longing for some security in life. Or, I just want to be loved by somebody. I need to have a relationship for that. If that's your motivation in looking to be in a couple, then that's the wrong motivation, because ultimately all of those things, the acceptance, the love, the security, the affirmation that we need in life needs to come from God. We can never get that from another person, because other people, regardless of how much people love you, they will always let you down. That's the reality, because we're human and we make mistakes and we fail each other. God never does. And so if you're looking for acceptance and you're looking for security, then the place that you need to go to, the person that you need to go to primarily, is God, because that is the only relationship where you're going to find everything that you're looking for. If, on the other hand, you're dating or there's somebody that you really like and you think, do you know what, I actually really can imagine myself long term, marrying this person, I think, this is who God's got for me, then that's a good starting place, okay? That's a good motivation for getting into a relationship. But outside of that, if it's just a wee whim or, you're looking for something that actually you can't find, then, we would just urge you to walk away, because actually you're leading yourself down a path that's going to lead to hurt, ultimately. And we don't want that for any of you, and God doesn't want that for any of you either. So, how to date is really what we're going to look at for the next little while. And first of all, I want to say, when you're dating or when you're thinking about starting to date somebody, really important is that you guard your heart. The Bible talks about it in Proverbs. It says, guard your heart because it's the wellspring of life, or from it directs the paths of your life. Actually, your heart is so precious and your heart is so valuable to you, but also to God. And if you just give it away to somebody who's not right for you, or you let it be mistreated by somebody else, you're ultimately just letting yourself be destroyed in a way that's not right, and in a way that God doesn't desire you to be treated. So you need to protect your heart. We have that responsibility ourselves in the choices that we make as well, to look after our hearts, to guard our hearts. That's what it says. It doesn't say, God will guard your heart. God obviously does protect us, but it's the command. It says, guard your heart. We have that responsibility. We need to be doing that for ourselves. So we want to give you that warning at the start. Don't let yourself be mistreated. It's so easy when you're in a relationship and somebody starts to treat you wrong to think, oh, do you know what, it's okay. It's been better before, it'll be okay again. You can't go down that path. You don't know. You need to be protecting yourself. You need to be looking after yourself, and you need to be guarding what God has given you, which is so precious, and that is your heart.
Brilliant. Okay, if you want to click onto the next slide for us, Colin. Pulling no punches here, really, from 2 Corinthians. Advice for you and I today in this area of dating. Don't team up with those who are unbelievers. How can righteousness be a partner with wickedness? How can light live with darkness? What harmony can there be between Christ and the devil? How can a believer be a partner with an unbeliever? Whew. Just say what you think, it's pretty straight down the middle, right? Don't date a non-Christian if you're a Christian. The Bible says, not me. That's pretty hard-hitting stuff. And we could just leave that hanging in the air like that, but it might not be fair, because who knows what circumstances you came to Christ in, right? You might have already been dating somebody and then you became a Christian, and maybe your partner hasn't. So if you're feeling kind of empathy with this, or you think this might be something that is perhaps really zooming in on your experience at the moment, please come and talk to us, and we can chat about your context, some specifics. Come and talk to us at the end. But we just have to be faithful to what the Word says. If you're a Christian, don't date a non-Christian. The difference between being a follower of Jesus and not is massive. It will totally dictate how you view the rest of life. What am I going to do with the rest of life? What decision what stance do I take on this decision? How do I view this scenario? All of that flows from your faith in God, right? Or at least it should. And so if you're coming at it from that angle, but you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who's not, and maybe even anti, you're just going to be heading off on a rocky road, and it's going to end up with a lot of heartache and pain. Although in saying that, my cousin started dating when he wasn't a Christian, and his girlfriend wasn't a Christian, and he became a Christian, and his girlfriend didn't at the time, and he was thinking, oh man, what am I going to do? Because all this happened before I became a Christian, and now I'm trying to live for God. What do I do? And he just kept praying for Grace, who's now his wife, kept praying and praying, and Grace got saved, and Grace came through, and then God is building a family of believers there. So that's why I say, if this is ringing bells for you, come and talk to us at the end, because it'd be great to talk specifics. But just to be faithful to the text, like right now, if you're a Christian and you're single, don't go looking for a partner who's not a Christian. Don't do that. Let's be worshipping God with our decisions in life. And the best thing for you to do if you're looking for a partner is to think of someone of like mind, another Christian. Cool. And for those of you who are Christians and you're dating, both of you are followers of Jesus and you're dating, we would just want to say that a few words about the atmosphere of what your relationship should be like. Sacrifice and selflessness are trademarks of our faith, aren't they? Because that's just Jesus. Sacrifice, the giving of himself, the thinking of others. I think it's Matthew 10, I might be wrong, but Jesus says at one point, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus' life and pattern for us to follow is one of selflessness, one of thinking of others. So let that be the flavour of your relationship. Kind of examine your heart tonight. If you're a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you're dating and you're both Christians, just examine your heart tonight. Think, do I look out for my girlfriend ahead of myself? Am I trying to help her through life by thinking about her needs ahead of my own? Or is it all about what I can get out of this relationship? Or is it all about my needs? The flavour of our relationships should be one where we prefer others ahead of ourselves. So aim for that, guys. Aim for that. Because that's what Jesus did in his life when he gave himself for us. And that's the model he wants us to follow in all aspects of life and dating.
Okay, so now we're going to look at boundaries, which is probably one of the most talked about topics within relationships. Where do we draw the line? All that sort of stuff. So we're just going to start. I'm not sure if the next verse is up on that one. I can't remember. 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5. It is there, brilliant. So we'll start with this. It's God's will that you should be sanctified, that you should avoid sexual immorality, that each of you should learn to control your own body in a way that is holy and honourable, not in passionate lust like the pagans who do not know God. Just to set the scene there, sexual immorality, and if you go back to the original, the word is porneia. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced, that's how it looks, and basically refers to any sort of sex outside of marriage. So in this it's saying, anything sex outside of marriage that is just off boundary, out of boundaries for Christians, and that's what we have to live by, because the Bible teaches it very, very clearly. But the thing that's really interesting in that for me is that it says we have to learn how to control our own bodies. Okay, it's not the responsibility of your partner just to have boundaries in place. You have a responsibility, a God-given responsibility, to learn to control your own body, to control your own urges, and to live in a way that is holy and honourable. And that can be tough, right? Okay, if you do dating and stuff, it's not always easy. to have that self-control, but actually it's biblical and it's something that we need to be able to put into practice. And we're going to look a little bit more later on at how practically we can actually do that. And just if you want, I'm not going to read it now, but if you want to find out a bit more, Ephesians 5 verses 1 to 5 also talks the word sexual immorality, and that again is this same idea of anything outside of marriage is just wrong. So again, this idea that this is very, very biblical. There's no way as a Christian you can get around it. It's there in black and white, and that boundary is there. Period.
You might be sitting there thinking, this is great, I'm dating at the moment, this is brilliant. Or you might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm single and I'm quite happy being single, so can I just switch off for like the next 15 minutes? Well, no, because you don't know what lies ahead, but also if you tune in to the biblical guidance in this area, you can be someone who helps somebody who is living through this right now. So it's really for all of us, either now or in the future. So let's try and just be open to the stuff that's happening here. When we talk about boundaries, the Bible doesn't say, outside of obviously saving sex for marriage, it doesn't say you can't do this, this, or this with your girlfriend, or you can do this, this, and this, but not that. It doesn't say that, does it? We can't pull out some specifics for you to say, when you're falling around on the couch, you shouldn't be doing this, this, and this. We can't go there because it doesn't say that. But here's the thing. That situation puts us in a place where we have a choice to make, and it can be a really dangerous place to be in. Because we can end up thinking, okay, well, how far can I go with my partner before we step over that boundary line and actually have sex before we're married? How far can I go? We have to be careful when we're asking that question. Because if my motivation is, what can I get away with? Then that's probably not the greatest start for the journey, because sooner or later, I'm not going to be worrying about what I can get away with. If my motivation is just like that, then sooner or later I'm going to make a slip and I'm going to end up in a mess. Our starting place, a really good starting place, would be Jesus, relationship with Jesus. And just thinking, it's not what can I get away with, but how can I honour him best? How can I honour him best? Less is more in this area, right? Less is more. You're never going to regret less activity in this area with someone you're dating than more activity. Do you understand me? Like, less is more. You might be in this kind of stable relationship with your partner right now, and things might be going great, and you might think, oh, do you know what, we're going to get married, so what does it matter, right? What if you don't get married? What if something happens and you view that situation differently, and amicably maybe you just drift apart and you decide, you know what, we're probably not destined for marriage, so we're going to split up. And if that had happened, and you'd have allowed yourselves to go further and further and further, man, think of the regret that you feel. Maybe you do find that partner that you marry, and you go into marriage and you don't want to be bringing this baggage of regret of, I wish I hadn't. So that's why I say less is more. And you all know Steve Parsons, who comes down for Crossroads and all. And he gave a brilliant kind of picture of trying to explain this whole area of boundaries. And he was saying, if you imagine that you might have even heard this, so if I get it wrong, you could be like, yeah, Steve, this guy didn't have a clue, he wasn't listening. But he said something like this, like, you imagine you have this huge mansion that is going to be your house. And in order for you to drive home, to get to that house, you have a chauffeur who drives your vehicle home, right? But the path home to your beautiful house is one that is full of dangers. Sharp turns and really, really thin strip of road where there is a huge drop. Okay? And he would say, you have the choice of two chauffeurs to drive your vehicle home. The first guy knows how to handle a vehicle really, really well, okay? He will fly home. He will stick it into top gear. He will just go. And do you know what? He's going to be so close. He's going to be so on the corners, real sharp, real fast. He'll get you there real quick. But he's going to drive really close to the edge. And you know what? It's going to be touch and go for a while. Or the second guy, he's a sensible driver, right? He's not going to put your life at risk. He's not going to bring risk into the situation. He won't get you there as quickly, but he'll make sure that you get there without losing anything in one piece, arriving at your beautiful mansion. Which chauffeur would you choose? You don't want the guy who's going to put you at risk of falling off the cliff face, do you? And then you miss out on the arrival of your gorgeous mansion. No, you want the guy who's going to get you there as you should, with everything intact, home safe and sound, enjoy the beautiful mansion. It's a bit like that when we think of boundaries. If I'm thinking, how close to the edge can I go without falling? You're going to fall. Because in the heat of the moment, fellas especially, right? In the heat of the moment, if you're thinking, well, how far can I go here without falling? You're going to fall. You know what it's like. How the heart fires up, the temperature rises, suddenly you feel a certain way, strong emotions. How far can I go here? You're going to fall. So think less is more. Think of the safe chauffeur who get you home, for you to enjoy that beautiful mansion with everything as it should be. Less is more. It's definitely the way to go when we think of boundaries.
And actually, in line with that, the Bible teaches that we should flee from temptation, not that we should put ourselves into a position of letting ourselves be tempted further. And so, if the further you go, the more tempted you become, which is natural. Don't put yourself in that position in the first place. Don't cross that line to start with. Stay away from everything in that area until you're within the context of marriage where it's designed for. Just to say on this note, because this just sounds a bit like, oh, they're saying all this, sex is not bad, okay? God created sex. Sex is good, but within the right context, okay? And that is within a marriage. God created it for marriage, and He created it for us to enjoy within marriage. And so in that context, it's fine, okay? We're not here saying, ooh, never have sex. If you're married or you do get married, brilliant.
Hazel is heavily pregnant at this point, so draw your own conclusions.
Thanks for that, James. So now as I blush and continue to talk.
It's a illustration, just do it, isn't it? It wasn't in the notes, but I just read it.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Probably shouldn't have.
Oh, well, it's too late now. Genesis 1, in the beginning, it tells us God created man and woman. He made us. He made us differently, and He made us for each other. And God affirms Adam and Eve, He tells them, to be fruitful and multiply. So that is part of God's design. It's part of what God has created for the human race. But much like fire, it's created to be within a certain context. On a winter's night, if you go into a house and there's a nice fire lit in the fireplace, it's lovely, right? It's nice and warm and safe. And I love nothing better on a winter's night than getting into a house and having a nice big fire. I think it's lovely. But if I walked into one of my friends' houses and they had just decided, oh, we don't have a fireplace, so we're just going to light a fire in the middle of the room, I wouldn't feel quite so safe around that, because that's not really where a fire is designed to be, right? And it's much the same with sex, okay? God's created it, and in the right context, brilliant, it's fine. Outside of that, and it just gets dangerous. And he's put these guidelines here for our protection and for a reason. The problem with society is that our view of sex and all things sexual relationships has become warped. And this isn't just now, it's not just today, this is right back from Bible times. People were still struggling with this, we're still getting it wrong because we're humans and we get it wrong. The thing is, instead of focusing on God, society, particularly today, I think it's gotten worse. Society today, sex is a god, right? It's everywhere, it's used to sell things in advertisements, it's all about sex, and it's hard not to be influenced by society around us. We've created a society where sex is cheapened, where it's become a commodity, it's something that's bought and sold. Trafficking is in the increase in Ireland and in the UK, and that's just another aspect of how we have created, or how we've taken something that God's created and we've just worked it into this sick situation where people are abused, people are mistreated. We've perverted it into all sorts of unnatural things as humans. We think that, it's okay. The society will tell you sex is just physical, it's just a bit of fun, it's fine. I don't know if any of you saw the movie, I didn't, but I saw trailers for it, Friends with Benefits. Maybe it was out last year, I think, Justin Timberlake and somebody. The trailers of that was enough to make me think, you know what, that's a load of junk. It was basically saying it's fine to just sleep with your friends because it's just physical, there's nothing more to it. What a lie! But yet that is what we are being fed constantly. And so we need to keep coming back to Scripture, we need to keep coming back to the Bible, and we need to keep reminding ourselves that God has a standard, and that's what we need to live by as Christians.
It's not just society of our age who would just say sex is an item, a commodity, or just a physical act. If you want to go on to the next screen, one for a sec, Colin, yeah. This verse is really relating to a practice that was happening in Corinth at the time, these people that Paul was writing to. So they had a huge temple in that place where it was to obviously a false goddess. And as part of this kind of pagan worship of this false goddess, people would go and sleep with shrine prostitutes as a kind of an act of honouring this false goddess. And so for these guys, they had a kind of a warped, messed up view and image of the sexual union, just as our own culture today does, if you look at magazines and the movies like Hazel talks about. And so it's really interesting to see what the Word of God says on this topic. And so it's just here on the screen, 1 Corinthians 6. Paul saying, don't you realise that your bodies are actually parts of Christ? Should a man take his body, which is part of Christ, and join it to a prostitute? Never. And don't you realise, and this is the key that we want to talk about, don't you realise that if a man joins himself to a prostitute, he becomes one body with her? For the Scriptures say the two are united into one. One of the biggest lies of our kind of media influence of our society today is that sex is just a physical act. Sure, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? Just a physical act. Whereas the design of God and the sexual union of man and woman, yes, of course it is that, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. It's a spiritual connection as well. Two become one. This kind of mysterious, intense spiritual connection when we think of the sexual union of man and woman too. And so when we forget that, we kind of cheapen it, and it's dangerous because we're talking about something that is a great mystery, this kind of spiritual connection. When two people come together in the sexual union, it's a joining, a deep spiritual joining. And if that's not taken place within marriage, then we just open ourselves up to hurt and pain. Because if we're just having sex with a boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, it's very loose, there's no real commitment, we're opening ourselves up to pain because we've joined with that person. But then when things go wrong and your relationship takes a turn for the worse and you split up, or it's just a one-night stand, we don't actually realise that the relationship was broken, but we've also broken too. Because we've left a part of ourselves in that connection. Do you follow me? Are you with me? It's so much more than a physical act. So much more beautiful and precious than that. It's a deep spiritual connection too. And so if we're giving ourselves away with different partners, then we're losing like a little piece of ourselves along the journey as we go, and just going to end up with real brokenness, real pain, real regret. This is why God says man and woman become one. It's for marriage. The sexual union is for marriage, because it's a powerful thing that we're talking about. So we need to be wise when we think of boundaries and how we handle ourselves, particularly in this area, because we don't want you guys to get hurt. We don't want you guys to suffer from the brokenness of how relationships can go wrong.
Just to say on a note, with that, if anyone here has, because we don't know where you're coming from, if anyone here has already screwed up and is starting to feel a bit like, do you know what, I've messed up and there's no hope, there is complete hope, okay, because God is a God of forgiveness and second chances. And so, you're not condemned, it's not like you've messed up, that's it forever, okay? There is forgiveness and there is acceptance in God, and so, we're not wanting to say all this to make you feel condemned, so just, be aware of God's grace and forgiveness in all of this as well. really what we want to say is we want you to worship God in your relationships, and I know James said that at the start, and so a really good thing to do is to be open about your relationship, okay? If you're a young person here and you've got a youth pastor or a youth leader or somebody like that, be open with them about the fact that you're dating somebody, and allow them to ask you questions, because actually if you're trying to be secretive and hide something, then there's probably something that you're trying to hide, which means you kind of know there's something not right from the start. Whereas if you can be open and talk openly about the fact that you are in a relationship and how the relationship's going, well then that's a bit of almost a guard that's in place. But also have somebody to be accountable to. When James and I were living in England, this is something the church we were in was really big in, and both of us had people that we were accountable to there about our relationship when we were dating, isn't that right? And so they would ask us questions about how things were going and about how our boundaries were going, and I'll be honest with you, it sucked sometimes, right? Because having to be honest about where you screw up with somebody is not always easy, and in fact actually I find it really uncomfortable opening up about stuff like that generally with anybody, let alone having one person who can ask anything that they want to. But it's also one of the most helpful things, because if it's the only thing that stops you from crossing the line in thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to meet up with such and such next week and they're going to ask me, and if I do such and such, I'm going to have to tell them that I've done that and I don't want to do that. If that's what it takes to put you off, crossing boundaries, do it, okay? It might be horrible and it might suck, but actually it's going to put protection in place for you in relationships in the future. So definitely I would recommend have somebody that you can be accountable to about your relationship. But also be wise yourself. Where are you going to hang out with the person? If you're going to, it only suits to see each other in a certain evening, and actually, you can't really afford to go out, so you're going to go to their house, but actually, their parents are downstairs, so you're going to go and hang out in their room. Is that the wisest idea in the world, to just the two of you be in someone's bedroom? Probably not. So, be wise about where you spend time with a person, because actually, even things like that can lead to mistakes. Clothing, how you dress, be careful about that as well, okay? We're responsible for putting boundaries in place for ourselves. Girls, don't be wearing really provocative things if you're going to go and see your boyfriend. Yeah, look nice for him, but don't be wearing something very skimpy, because actually that's not very helpful for him. And likewise, guys, don't be wearing
skimpy things.
Skimpy things, because that's just not appropriate. The equivalent, whatever that is. And even things like kissing, I remember somebody talking about this and hearing this and thinking it was ridiculous, but they said basically that they put a boundary in place where they wouldn't kiss for longer than a certain number of minutes at a time, because they knew if they did, they then were going to feel tempted to maybe go a bit further than just kissing. And I remember thinking, that's really strange, but actually, it's wise if you know that the more you spend time kissing, the more you're going to kind of, heat up a bit and things are going to get uncomfortable, then, just don't put yourself in that position. Put a boundary in place where you just draw the line. And it might feel really weird at the start to be like, okay, I think that's long enough now. But you know what, actually, if it's protective for your relationship and for yourself, and it helps you guard yourself and the value that you have, then it's totally worth it.
Some of you are really kind of uncomfortable when Hazel talks about that kissing there, but it's good to just be open and honest about this sort of stuff. Because if you can have this kind of honesty and hear somebody say something like that and actually try and take that on board, it's worship. It's worship to God. It's saying, God, I don't want to go against your will for my life here. I don't want to end up going against your plan. So go ahead and worship. Don't worry if you feel stupid. Don't worry if you feel uncomfortable thinking about this thing. You go ahead and worship by putting God first. And you'll never regret that choice. You'll never regret that. You have to be sensible, like Hazel said, when you're dating, the places you go and stuff like that. Do you remember, the story of Joseph, and you remember how Potiphar's wife, wasn't it, was really coming on to him. Day after day, the Bible says, really coming on to him. And one day, circumstances just worked out, the story, where it's just the two of them alone, and she's making her play. And how did he respond? We thought about it, didn't he? Thought about it for a while, waited. No, he legged it, didn't he? He got out of there. And unfortunately for him, left his cloak behind, and she used that against him. Right? But he realised in that moment, hey, I'm going to lose control if I stay in this situation any longer. So he got out of there. So fellas, really, I'm talking to you, if you're dating and you're trying to be honouring God with boundaries here. If you want to honour God and date the way that's right, Don't be alone with your partner when it comes to late at night. Alright? Remember that. You think, who's that stupid English boy talking about? You will benefit from this if you listen. If you want to honour God and date the way that's right, don't be alone with your partner when it comes to late at night. You know what will happen if you are. You're going to say no in the heat of the moment, guys? I don't think so. So don't put yourself in that situation. Get out of there. And actually, if you make that call in your relationship, girls, that means this guy is saying, do you know what? I value what we have here. You are precious, and I don't want to ruin this. You are so special. I want to respect you. I want to respect where we're at. Girls, a fellow like that, that's the sort of guy you want to be thinking about marrying. Someone who's going to respect you and put you first. So think about where you're at and get out of there if you know it's going to be hard to handle.
Okay, so on a slightly different note, some of you here are not dating, some of you are single, some of you have no interest whatsoever in trying to find a partner now, and that is fine. Maybe some of you will never, you just have no real interest in a relationship, you've got other stuff going on in your life. That is, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes society will tell you that you have to be in a relationship or you have to get married in order for your life to be complete. That's rubbish, okay? The Bible doesn't teach that. In fact, I think if we go on to the next slide, I think there's a verse. This is Paul again, and he says, sometimes I wish everyone were single like me, a simpler life in many ways, but celibacy is not for everyone any more than marriage is. God gives the gift of a single life to some, and the gift of married life to others. Okay, so the Bible teaches it clearly. Marriage is not for everybody, relationships is not for everybody. If you think a relationship's not for you, that's fine. It doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't make your life any less fulfilled. It's just the plan that God has for you. And so that's fine. And actually, as we said at the start, the ultimate fulfillment, the ultimate relationship that each and every single one of us was made for was relationship with God. And so that's the relationship that first and foremost we need to be pursuing in life. Not marriage, not dating, not friends, nothing like that. The primary relationship that we need to focus on with every ounce of energy that we have is our relationship with God, because that is the relationship we were created for. That is the only perfect relationship we will ever experience, and it's the only relationship that will never let us down. And so that's what we really want you to go after. Jesus, the ultimate role model for Christians, the person who led the perfect life, who honoured God in the most incredible way, he was single, okay? And if it's good enough for Jesus, then it's good enough for people too, okay? So don't feel like, people tell you have to get married, especially in Christian circles. Oh, you're not dating anybody yet. Oh, what about such and such? And people have an awful way of always trying to match me. Do you know what? If you don't feel like it's for you, that is fine. It could just be that that's what God's got for you, and that's perfectly acceptable.
So we can kind of wrap things up now. I realise we've probably gone on for like 15 minutes longer than we wanted to. But we just wanted to put this out there because we don't often talk about things like dating and sex in the context of a church gathering, but we should, right? It's like money. Whenever you start to talk about money, people get all uncomfortable. But you just talk about money all the time. So we just wanted to put it out there for you.